On the air and streaming on the web since 1996, this is Cinematic Sound.
Welcome everyone to another edition of Cinematic Sound Radio. This is the show dedicated to the music of film, television, and video games. My name's Eric Woods, and I'm your host. Thank you very much for taking the time to join me today. On today's program, we're celebrating Halloween with our annual Halloween special. And today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Last month, I received a brand new film music book called Scored to Death: Conversations with Some of Horror's Greatest Composers by John Blake Fichera. This is the very first book to delve specifically and deeply into the minds of noted horror genre composers. Now, author and interviewer J. Blake Fichera is a film editor, musician, podcaster, and horror movie and music fan. If you're interested in hearing him on his podcast, you can check him out at Saturday Night Sleepovers at saturdaynightsleepovers.podwits.com. In this book, Fichera interviews 14 renowned film composers who have provided music for some of horror genre's greatest films and franchises. I think it's a fantastic read, actually, and it's a format that's very similar to Michael Schell's book called The Score, Interviews with Film Composers. That one's a 16-year-old book, but I still think it's a great and insightful read, and I highly recommend it. And I actually use it quite often during this show as show prep and research. So on today's program, I'm going to read for you excerpts from the book and play musical selections from the composers that we're going to feature for you on the program. And we have a very pleasant surprise at the end of the show that you don't want to miss out on that. We'll leave it as a surprise for you, so if you get to the end of the program, you have a nice surprise waiting for you. So let's begin. We're going to open up with music from composer Nathan Barr. In the book, he tells an interesting story about his relationship with Hans Zimmer. I won't spoil that for you. There's quite a bit about this story in the book and Barr's and Zimmer's relationship, and I really want you to discover that for yourself when you read it. However, he did have a few things to say about Hostel and its sequel. Hostel was a 2005 film directed by Eli Roth. The film tells the story of two college students traveling across Europe who find themselves preyed upon by a mysterious group that tortures and kills kidnapped victims. It's a guts and gore film that actually did surprisingly well at the box office. It was the #1 film during its opening weekend. In the book, Barr talks about getting the opportunity to use a full symphony orchestra on Hostel. With Hostel, there was a budget there for an orchestra, and I think we used a 90 or 95-piece orchestra. I went to Prague to record it, and again, it was just sort of like, let's get really big and raucous with the orchestra. So there's a lot of almost heavy metal riffs played in the lower ends of the strings. And then there's a lot of fun contrabassoon stuff, and then there's a glass harmonica, which I played for some of the more magical moments in the movie. And then there's a very deliberate tip of the hat to Bernard Herrmann with the main Hostel theme. It has this 4-note motif with 16th note strings bouncing up and down octaves. It sounds a lot like Bernard Herrmann, which I really liked. Not that I would compare myself to him, but that was my nod to him. Here now is music from the 2005 film Hostel, with original score composed by Nathan Barr. Music from the original motion picture soundtrack to Hostel, released in 2005 with original score composed by Nathan Barr. And the original soundtrack recording is available on Varese Saraband Records.
You're listening to the film, television, and video game music radio show, Cinematic Sound.
Welcome back to the program. On today's show, we are featuring our annual Halloween special, and we're also reading excerpts from a new book called Scored to Death, Conversations with Some of Horror's Greatest Composers, which was written by J. Blake Fichera. Up next, we're going to listen to music from composer Charles Bernstein, who is best known for his work on the first Nightmare on Elm Street film and April Fool's Day. But before those films, he wrote the music for the adaptation of Stephen King's psychological thriller Cujo, a novel that came out in 1981 and that was released theatrically in 1983. The film was directed by Louis Teague, with cinematography by Jan de Bont, and the film starred Dee Wallace, playing a mother protecting her child from a rabid Saint Bernard. In the book, Scored to Death, Charles Bernstein discussed his first impression on the film, which he approached more as a family film than a horror film. When I first saw the film, Dan Blatt, the producer, had brought me in, and I was a little worried that it takes the movie a long time to get dark, and its conflicts are almost like two movies. There's the dog in there, and then there's the whole family thing, and the two come together very late in the film to very dark results. So I was very worried about how to open the movie. It originally opened with a fade-in on the grass where the rabbit comes out of the rabbit hole, and there's no title graphic. I requested that they consider doing something really dark, something that would tell the audience right away that this is going to be a dark movie. And let me score the graphic of the Cujo title that lets the audience know what they're in for. And then let's back up and let the rabbit come in. Don Blatt was very open to that idea, but I never did see that graphic completed when I recorded the music. It was just a black slug, a strip of blank film used to stand in for the missing forthcoming footage in the film. Anyway, that was helpful, and I approached Cujo in a very thematic fashion. There was a theme for the dog, a low French horn theme, and there was a theme for the family drama and for the boy. Those themes were musically able to then be dark and combined in ways that I think helped unify the film. It was challenging. And now music from the original motion picture soundtrack to the 1983 film Cujo, with original score composed by Charles Bernstein. Music from the original motion picture soundtrack to Cujo, released in 1983, with original score composed by Charles Bernstein. And the original soundtrack recording was released on Intrada Records.
On the air and streaming on the web since 1996, this is Cinematic Sound.
Welcome back to Cinematic Sound Radio. This is our annual Halloween special. And on today's program, we're featuring Halloween music and a brand new book called Scored to Death, Conversations with Some of Horror's Greatest Composers by J. Blake Fichera. We are reading excerpts from this book throughout today's program. Up next, we're going to listen to music by composer Joseph Bishara and his music from The Conjuring 2, released this year, which was directed by James Wan, and is a sequel to the 2013 film. In this movie, Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga reprise their roles as paranormal investigators and authors Ed and Lauren Warren from the first film. This film follows the Warrens as they travel to Britain to assist the Hodgson family, who are experiencing poltergeist activity at their Brimsdown Enfield Council House in 1977, which later became referred to as the Enfield Poltergeist. This score is yet another creepy, terrifying effort by Bishara, who has pretty much been pigeonholed as a horror composer, but that doesn't seem to bother him, as he has admitted he's, at first and foremost, a horror fan. He has this to say in the opening of his chapter in the book: "Horror has always been a genre that I'm drawn to naturally. It's the one that had the most energy for me. There's always just seemed to be something a little bit more compelling about being on the edge of everything going away." As the interview ends in the book, Bishara is asked about seeing his scored films with an audience. Seeing things with an audience is definitely a different experience. It's always different when there is a new energy added to something that you're viewing. Everything always feels different with an audience. That's why people like to show things to people and just see what it feels like in the room, because sometimes something is uncertain, like, is this sequence too long or is it too short? And it can be very apparent once you show it in a room full of people just by how it feels. It's always interesting because you're just seeing things with a very different mindset occupying that space. Sometimes details you didn't even notice will make people jump and scare them. And you'll get a big gasp where you thought it might just pass as another moment. You just never know how any particular audience is going to react to something. And now here's music from Joseph Bishara's brand new score to The Conjuring 2. Music from the original motion picture soundtrack to The Conjuring 2, with original score composed by Joseph Bishara, and the original soundtrack recording is available on Water Tower Music.
On the air and streaming on the web since 1996, this is Cinematic Sound.
Welcome back to Cinematic Sound Radio. My name's Eric Woods. On today's program, we're featuring our annual Halloween special. I hope you're enjoying today's program. And today we are actually reading excerpts from a brand new book. I highly recommend you go out and pick this one up if you are a serious fan of film music and horror film music. It's called Scored to Death, Conversations with Some of Horror's Greatest Composers by J. Blake Fichera. Up next, we're going to feature music from a film called Maniac, with original score composed by J. Chattaway. The plot focuses on a disturbed and traumatized serial killer who scalps his victims. The film was written by Joe Spinell, and he actually stars in the film as the lead character. The film had a minuscule budget. Many scenes in the film were actually shot guerrilla style. The film was originally considered an exploitation film, and Maniac has actually since attained a cult following. Unlike most films where the composer can score to the picture due to the film's limited budget, Chattaway couldn't work in the traditional way. Here's what Chattaway had to say about the scoring process on Maniac. We didn't have a facility to score to picture. The picture that I had done previously in London was actually a big studio picture, so that was scored to picture. For that film, the picture was projected while we were rehearsing and recording the music, so you can make adjustments. But with Maniac, there was just no way to synchronize a moviola with live musicians. It just wasn't practical to do that. So the process was that everything was written on timings. There were click tracks involved, and I had this huge book that would convert timings into clicks, and we had a digital metronome. That was about as fancy as we could get. Almost all the cues had to have click in them, a metronome track. Then once we recorded the metronome track, we would check it with the stopwatch to make sure that it was right for the picture. And we checked the internal hits, exactly synchronized points where certain notes or chords need to be within the overall span of the cue. For instance, if someone was getting stabbed, you had to make sure that it was in sync, or else it would look pretty strange. All that timing was very critical, and we had no means other than a click track and a stopwatch to really check it out. That's why we were all amazed when we actually looked into the mixing studio and watched the score with the film for the very first time, that we realized the score actually worked. Here's music from the 1980 slasher film called Maniac, with original score composed by J. Chattaway. Music from the 1980 film Maniac, with original score composed by J. Chattaway, and the original soundtrack recording was released by Varese Sarabande Records.
Bringing you the very best of original music composed for films, television, and video games, this is Cinematic Sound.
Welcome back to the program. On today's show, we're featuring our annual Halloween special, and we're reading excerpts from a brand new book called Scored to Death, Conversations with Some of Horror's Greatest Composers by J. Blake Fichera. Up next, we're going to focus on the music of John Carpenter and his creepy score to The Fog, a film released in 1980, directed by John Carpenter, starring Jamie Lee Curtis. Tells the story of a strange glowing fog that sweeps in over a small coastal town in California, bringing with it the vengeful ghosts of mariners who were killed in a shipwreck in that town exactly 100 years before. The Fog was Carpenter's first theatrical film after the success of his 1978 horror film Halloween, and this film features one of the greatest posters of all time. It's a still of Jamie Lee Curtis holding a door with the fog and an arm trying desperately to reach through the crack. It's just a splendid, splendid poster. They don't make them like that anymore. Now, repetition plays a key role in John Carpenter's music, and in the book Scored to Death, he goes into more detail about the musical device that seems to be his calling card. I don't know if there's any rules to this. That's the thing. I tell people there are no rules to any of this. I wouldn't say that a horror film needs repetition, but you take a score for a movie like Jaws, it's simple, and everybody knows it. It's 2 notes repeated over and over again, and it's really effective for the thing beneath the surface that's coming to get you. But then there are other, lusher, more developed scores for horror films. It all depends. It depends on the composer and the director, but there are no rules for it. In my case, and you're going to laugh about this, but repetition is something that I can do because I'm not particularly an accomplished musician. I can do repetitive really well. You do what you can do well. I can do repetitive all day long. I have minimal chops as a musician, and recognizing that early was one of my strengths. So I play to that, and I've always done that. Repetition can be a useful device when building tension. Silence can be too. In the case of something like Halloween, it works because the audience is waiting for something to change, and it doesn't. It puts them in a little bit of discomfort emotionally, because they expect it to evolve and change, but it just keeps repeating. But there's no hard, fast rule about any of this. That is what you have to keep in mind. There are rules for both music and movies in terms of making them, but not necessarily what works the best. That's all up to the talent and the taste of the director and the composer. Here now is a suite of music from John Carpenter's score to his very own film released in 1980 called The Fog. Music from the original motion picture soundtrack to The Fog. The original score composed by John Carpenter. And that suite of music comes off the expanded edition of the original film soundtrack, which was made available on Silva Screen Records.
On the air and streaming on the web since 1996, this is Cinematic Sound.
Welcome back to the show. This is our annual Halloween special, and today we are reading excerpts from a great new book by John Blake Fichera called Scored to Death, Conversations with Some of Horror's Greatest Composers. We're now going to listen to music from a 2012 supernatural horror film called Sinister, directed by Scott Derrickson and starred Ethan Hawke, playing a fictional true crime writer who discovers a box of home movies in his attic that puts his family in danger. Christopher Young scored this film, and it might very well be his most creative and ambitious horror film score to date. Anyone expecting another score like Hellraiser or Drag Me to Hell are guaranteed to be disappointed. Here is what Christopher Young had to say about Sinister in the book Scored to Death. With Sinister, I was lucky. Thanks to Scott Derrickson, I had the opportunity to do something which I wanted to do for years. Sinister is a reflection of the state of the art of electronics and electronic aesthetics that are relevant to what is going on today. I've always had an affinity for electronics. As I've said, my primary interest in the earliest days of my work in monster movies was this thing called musique concrète, where you use the microphone to record sounds and then modify them using various studio techniques. So it's a world that my brain has always been comfortable living in, and a world that I would have wanted to use more often had I been given the chance. But really, after Hellraiser and then a suspense film that I did called Jennifer 8, it sort of became understood that when you hire Chris Young, he's going to have to use strings. I remember trying to encourage the directors to give me the opportunity to let go of all that string stuff. But the producers and directors didn't want anything to do with that. They weren't coming to Chris Young for electronic stuff. If we wanted electronic stuff, we go and get a guy that does that. We want you to do that Hellraiser stuff. So I found that that was the recurring request. Chris, bring those strings in. That's what we've been looking for. Look, I love writing for strings, and there are things that only they can do successfully. There are a lot of synth scores that try to accomplish a lot of those crazy contemporary techniques, expanded techniques, ideas that string can do so successfully. But ultimately in Sinister, there wasn't the money to do anything with an orchestra, period. It was a financial consideration. It was never going to get recorded by a live orchestra. And by the way, there's no point in synths trying to act like a live orchestra, so screw it. Scott said, you've always wanted to work with electronic sounds. Here's your chance. It was the right movie. I don't think that putting an orchestral score in that movie would have worked. Finally, a situation came where I was able to accommodate something that I had been trying to do for years. Really years. So it was refreshing to me and to those who were actually listening to it. I get comments like, this score is one of the scariest things I've ever heard. So that's pretty cool. So here is one of the most bizarre horror film scores, modern horror film scores, that you will hear from Christopher Young. This is Sinister, released in 2012. Music from the original motion picture soundtrack to Sinister, released in 2012, with original score composed by Christopher Young. The original soundtrack recording is available on Varese Saraband Records. Well, we've come to the end of today's program. I want to thank you very much for tuning in. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about this show, please email us at cinematicsound@yahoo.com. Also, check us out on the web at cinematicsound.net. Also, please, if you're listening to this show through iTunes, it would be great if you could kindly rate the show and write us a review. It really helps us get noticed through the iTunes music store. I also want to thank Tim Burton for voicing all of those bumpers and stingers you heard throughout the show. Also to composer David Cosina, who wrote Cinematic Sound Radio's Fanfare. Now, I told you at the beginning of the program we're going to have a surprise for you at the end of the show. It's really an album that I actually just got a few hours ago. I'm going to be listening to this about the same time that you are. I haven't heard it yet. It's from the wonderful people at Sideshow Sound Theater at sideshowsoundtheater.com. Now, what they do every year is they compose, perform, and produce a brand new Halloween album. Just a concept album, which has a story that goes along with it, but they're quite entertaining albums. And if you go to sideshowsoundtheater.com and just check underneath Halloween music, you can check out all 5 of their albums. There's 5 now since the 5th one was just released. And if this is anywhere as good as the other 4 albums, then we are in for a treat, folks. The music was composed, performed, and produced by William Dodson and Wendell Jones, co-produced with narration written and performed by Peter Amsel, with vocal contributions by William Dodson, Xander Stobbs, and Ian Crabb. Again, go to sideshowsoundtheater.com and you can purchase this album digitally through Bandcamp. It's a 27-track album, and if you do purchase it through Bandcamp, you get unlimited streaming via the free Bandcamp app, plus high-quality downloads in MP3, FLAC, as well as more options. Also, after you're done with the album, I highly recommend you check out Sideshow Sound Theater Radio. These guys put on a fantastic podcast. I'm not saying that just because I've actually been on the show. I've been a fan of these guys for a few years now, and in my opinion, I think they put on the best film music related podcast out there. They have some great shows, which includes in-depth reviews of scores. For instance, myself, along with the Sideshow Sound team, we did a 2-hour episode just on James Newton Howard's Signs. Every week, they do something called Sideshow and Tell, which is a weekly news episode, which gets you up to date on everything that's happening in the film music world. They do a crazy show called In Defense Of, where they try to defend some of the worst movies that have ever been released. Well, that's not entirely true, but I mean, they're not really that great. For instance, they try to defend stuff like Superman Returns, Star Wars Episode 3, Spider-Man 3, and even Transformers. And even if they don't convince you that these films are good, they are still great listens, and they go into great detail about not only the movie, but the role that the music plays in the film as well. So anyway, sideshowsoundtheater.com. Check these guys out. And if you like the music that you hear on today's program, please go out there and support these guys, not only by buying their music, but also listening to their fantastic podcast as well. And before we get to the end of the program, also just a reminder, the book that we've been reading from during this entire episode is called Scored to Death, Conversations with Some of Horror's Greatest Composers by J. Blake Fichera. Again, if you are a fan of film music, then I highly recommend you check out this book. Even just a fan of horror films and horror music and film music as a whole. There are 14 interviews in this book, and it's just really a great read to get inside the heads of some of these fantastic and legendary film composers. So that's it for me. My name is Eric Woods. I really hope you enjoyed today's program. And here now is music from Sideshow Sound Theater's latest Halloween album called They Landed on Halloween. New music by Will Dodson and Wendell Jones. And until next time, take care and happy listening. Thank you for listening to Cinematic Sound Radio. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about the program, please email us at cinematicsound@yahoo.com. Don't forget to check us out at Cinematic Sound at cinematicsound.net on the web, Cinsound Radio on Twitter, and Cinematic Sound on Facebook. And if you listen to us on iTunes, why don't you take a moment right now to rate the show and write a brief review. All ratings and reviews help us get noticed on iTunes. And don't forget to tell your friends about the program as well. Share this show on your favorite social media network. We really appreciate all the support. And don't forget to check out our affiliates at WRock Radio at wrockradio.com and Pod Tyrant at podtyrant.com.